My steps to sobriety. You like the music? Yes.
I'm humming away here. It's actually quite nice.
I know.
Keep going.
I know, and I don't get sick of it, so that's a good sign, isn't it? Everyone, welcome to Signpost for Living with Dr. Kirsten Hunter, and we have Stephan Neff here. Hello, Dr. Stephan Neff. I'm sorry. How are you?
Please. Yes, whilst I worked hard to get that bloody doctor title, and nowadays I'm so no longer the German who insists on all the title and all the names, or the alphabet soup before and after the name. No, I come from New Zealand, where it's much, much more relaxed. Okay,
really?
So all good.
Have you ever had an upgrade with the doctor at the beginning of the name? Have you?
Oh, I see. I tried in the past when I was still flying 20, 25 years ago. No, the only thing that you get with the doctor is that they actually know who to call if some shit happens.
That's true.
On the flight. So I never got an upgrade, but I got called. And I thought, nah.
No.
Actually, no more doctor in there.
Well,
that's fine.
I'm a
so
doctor
if I feel like it, yes.
Yeah, I'm a doctor of psychology, as you know, and I always worry that I'll be on a plane one day and there'll be a medical emergency and they'll think I can help. And I can't. I can debrief them from the trauma. But
that's right, exactly right.
We'd be a good team, Stephan.
But that is so normal. That is so normal, honestly, because we are all there. I mean, as an anaesthetist, I am the guy who is probably most suited for any emergency. Okay. And in the past, I loved that aspect of my work. I was an instructor for virtually any of these courses that they are, from ATLS, ACLS, so different life support courses when the heart is not working right, when trauma hits you, major incidents, burns, you name it. I probably was instructing it over time. And that was always cool for me because I was the knight in shining armor. I could go in there. And anesthetists are a bit the special forces of the medical profession. So I thrived on that.
You enjoyed that.
But needless to say, hell, you can't do that a lifetime without scars and yeah. And of course, no one ever asks, why are you so keen helping others? Something only I learned much, much, much later.
That's a good question. Okay, well, we're here to talk about sobriety. And thank you very much for that. But a bit of background, first of all. So you're from New Zealand. You're in New Zealand at the moment. How long have you been in New Zealand for?
Born in beautiful Germany in the 60s, and I came to New Zealand first time around 1996. Then thought I want to be a little Aussie, went to Adelaide. Things didn't really work out there.
Right.
I tried. Bloody Dust Bowl with a lot of spiders, and there these Australians there. They were really a problem. No, kidding. Yeah, there is this good old banter between New Zealand and Australia. So anyone who's listening, I'm not insulting my guest. That's sort of a foreplay between nations kind of thing.
It is true. It's with love, isn't it? With a lot of love.
Exactly. So no, I was Adelaide, but then back to the UK, lived around the world in a nutshell due to various circumstances, and now settled for good in beautiful New Zealand. 2005, so I'm becoming a little Kiwi now.
That's great.
And I wouldn't have it any other way.
Well, you picked
It's a beautiful, relaxed place.
Beautiful part of the world, absolutely. So with sobriety, with alcohol, so when did you turn your force to wanting to communicate with people about your steps to sobriety, and also what's your history yourself with alcohol? Can you give me a bit of a scaffolding?
Okay.
Yeah.
Scaffolding, okay. Well, you can settle that horse in many different ways, but I would say I would start with being a young man in the 70s, 80s in Germany, alcohol is ubiquitous. It's everywhere. And there was a time when Mel Gibson was Lethal Weapon, and I don't know if you remember the film. It's basically the opening scene is where he wakes up in his caravan, walks naked to the toilet, has a piss whilst he's having a cigarette and a beer bottle in his hand. That was his breakfast. Those kind of anti-heroes, Bruce Willis, Die Hard, all these kind of things. Well, I thrived on that. I loved that kind of aspect.
Cool. Yeah.
Exactly right. And so these were sort of the role models that I had, because there were no real good role models in my life. I come from more sort of poor circumstances and broken family, you could say. And it was what it was. So I made up my own heroes, and they unfortunately mostly drank. Having said that, at that time I was not drinking. It was I had been the victim of a gang assault, and my teenager years really were marked by rigorous training and lots of martial arts, lots of darkness. But the darkness that I masquerade.
Because you didn't want to be vulnerable again after the assault.
Exactly right.
Horrendous.
Because it came out of the blue.
Horrible.
Oh, it was one of these things. Awful things happened to.
How old were you?
13.
Wow, that's so
13.
young. 13. 1-3. That is so young.
Yeah.
Oh, well, good on
and
you.
At that time, the knowledge about PTSD and trauma from a psychology point of view, if it was there, it was certainly not applied to me. It was certainly not, there was no knowledge in my family about that. I didn't have any support whatsoever. If at all, I was encouraged to join the police, sports clubs, which I did, and you can actually train in Germany. You can train with the police, martial arts, jiu-jitsu, and it was beautiful. So therefore, I actually turned from this maybe a little pudgy and naive teenager to this quite fighting machine, and it was physically what a transformation, and that came then really handy when I started university, because I was in an absolute perfect shape. And girls like that, And whilst I was quite dark in my thoughts, I then discovered alcohol. And then I suddenly realized, wow, I can relax. I'd put the gang leader behind bars with going in front of court, and he swore that he would get me and kill me, basically 3 years later. So for 3 years, I was living in that darkness, in that kind of constant, I'm ready, come on. And then suddenly alcohol made me go,
Yeah, escape.
Escape. Exactly. Oh, it was beautiful. Just I could relax.
Can I ask you?
Therefore I began to love alcohol.
Yeah, and I mean, the irony, right? You're an anaesthetist. My understanding of one of the major ingredients of anaesthetics, is that correct? Is alcohol. Is that true? So, you were literally trying to anaesthetize the pain. Is that not true?
Well, well, if we would be in 1840s, there are some beautiful descriptions of take half a bottle of good port and pour it up a man's bottom. That's a true description of, and I never understood why they wanted good port. I thought down there it doesn't really matter so much, but they insisted on good port. But that was the description.
Yeah.
So in 1840s, yes, and according to most of the Hollywood films, I'm sorry, you can't stitch yourself up with a dirty cat gut without having a swig of something.
Yeah.
So that is about the only thing that fits with alcohol. Okay. What fits with alcohol, though, is the journey that you take with the first drop. Initially nothing, then you get disinhibited, and then you get at a point where you get more and more inhibited, and then you're in coma. So that is what the journey is with alcohol, and our drugs do the same. If I give you a little bit of a sedative, then you become disinhibited. You start to laugh, joke, cry, whatever, tell me stories that you wouldn't even tell your your best friend, and then you become more sleepy and then you go off to sleep. So that would be the equivalent or the only kind of sort of similarity between alcohol and the drugs that we are using. But no, we are not injecting sort of, I don't know, white wine.
No.
Would you like the Chardonnay or Sauvignon?
But it is about disconnecting from the stress and the trauma and feeling so wired. Yeah, and I can understand as a young person trying to cope with that, the dark thoughts, alcohol would be a very good, well, you're thinking it's a good coping option.
Oh, absolutely. And it serves a need then, because there was suddenly the first time that I could relax. Can you imagine that after 3 years of tension? For me, alcohol was a God's gift. And I learned to use it in various settings, and you get quite good in it. So I could get myself to a level where I was the center of the party, despite probably being a relatively shy young man, but I was the center of the party. I had good friends. God, we threw some parties. They were out of the world at that time. We had a ball of a time. So it was great. Alcohol was all part and parcel of that. And at that time, there were no consequences with it. There was. I never turned ugly, a mean guy. On the contrary, I was always good fun, and it pronounced my sexuality. It made me come out there as well, and it reinforced me. So it had many advantages for me as a young man. We keep forgetting that because later on it wreaks havoc and it destroys lives. But there is a time and place when alcohol was a God's gift to us. Yeah. And I think that's so important to realize.
The honeymoon
Unfortunately,
stage,
I had Correct. I never had learned to deal with negative emotions, though. Sure. So suddenly, when there was this negative, when there was suddenly that effect, that escaping reality effect of alcohol, when that came in, beautiful.
So then time passes. When did it actually turn and become a concern, a problem for you? Was it a sudden or gradual, and was it change of life circumstance?
I was definitely. Oh my God! I certainly the powers to be out there, the universe threw me more than my fair share of trauma in my lifetime, and so since I still had not learned really to look after myself, therefore I relied more and more on the alcohol.
So you've got trauma, grab, trauma. Yep.
Absolutely, and so on it went, and it was. There was more to addiction than just the drink. Whilst we're talking here today, sobriety, really, I was also addicted to work. I was using work to forget. Because if you're just working, and you're otherwise an empty person, you suddenly identify yourself through the work. Everything that was good in my life came through work. Through hard work. I worked damn hard to be the person who I was. I wanted to be the best anaesthetist in the world. And I achieved many things. But it was with hindsight. I was just, again, trying to escape my personal reality by working really hard. And then after 15, 16 hours, then it was time, okay, I can't work anymore. Let's give me the drink.
Yep.
And so it's that kind of life. So I was running away for a long time from my own emotions and used basically drink and work to achieve that. And that all came blatant.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say you picked a profession that really rewards hard work as well. A culture that really demands so much of you. So the culture would have been really reinforcing and demanding that as well.
Absolutely. There are beautiful studies out there from the early 2000s which looked at work ethics amongst anaesthetists. And there were still many anaesthetists out there who would be working 60, 70, 80, 90 hours a week and would consider that normal. And these are consultants and who would expect the same from their juniors. No, you're the junior. You must be here before me and leave after me. So that kind of environment, that is where I grew up in. And it is scary to think with hindsight because no one was talking about work-life balance.
Yeah.
It was, you're here to work.
Yeah.
You're here to serve. You're supposed to be Florence Nightingale and Albert Schweitzer thrown in together, mixed around. And what do you mean, look after yourself? You're here for your patients.
Yeah.
That kind of
culture.
Stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. No mental health issues, depression, anxiety, coping, stress, all of the health issues that come from all those stress responses. Yeah. No. It's a
Exactly.
very, very good point. Yeah. So then what happened?
Things got darker and darker with more trauma, and I was no longer the funny drunk. I was full of anger and resentment, and that was my main driver, my main reaction to everything was anger and resentment.
Because you've got all of that trauma and the darkness with your thinking, and you're not working them through and addressing them, so they're accumulating.
Of course.
And they're just
Absolutely.
getting to a combustive point, and I can see that totally.
And you call it combustion. I think it was more implosion.
Right.
It was just, I was constantly, and then finally crash and burn. But that crash and burn, I committed suicide in installments. Really, it was a very toxic life that I lived, and I couldn't see a way out. So depression and darkness again came. This time a different darkness, not the darkness from PTSD, which is the fighting, but actually the despair, the hopelessness, the worthlessness, the helplessness. That was pronounced, and there was a strong external locus of control with me. In other words, everything was someone else's fault. Okay? It's, look, what they did to me and what they did to me. And it was all that. I had never learned to take responsibility with regards to my reactions. And sometimes my actions that caused other actions that I didn't like. Well, surprise, surprise. If you're an asshole, then maybe people are also an asshole to you. Yeah. And so if you're constantly grumpy and angry, well, do you really get the respect from your children? Do you really foster an environment where someone gives you the love that you so wish you would be given when you're actually more prickly than a cactus?
Absolutely.
Okay, so it was...
And that's a time when you're really needing people, hey? So you're pushing them away.
Isn't
You're
it?
becoming increasingly alone and isolated just when you're so incredibly vulnerable and you need that love and support.
Exactly.
So it's just going to be this vicious
cycle.
cycle.
And it's the hiding.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's the hiding that was so pronounced in my life. I was hiding that I was hungover. I was hiding that I was buying the alcohol. I was hiding that I was hiding the alcohol. Then I was hiding the drinking of the alcohol. Then I was hiding that I was drunk. I was a full-time employee of hiding. And it was, with hindsight, what a waste of my time. But ultimately, it was what it was. It was an awful time, and that sooner or later had to come crashing down. But as a high-functioning alcoholic, you become good in masking things as much as you can. You surround yourself with people who are in an equally who love to be drinking. You surround yourself, or it's just your whole world is focused on certain aspects in life, and drinking is a big part of them, whilst nowadays my life could not be more different. So it is a very weird time when you are in the throes of addiction. And for those of you out there who are not familiar with it or who struggle to understand it, ultimately the alcohol comes down to a level, at the same level as food, water, oxygen, breathing. It comes to that really fundamental, the body needs it. Because that's what really addiction is. It's a disease that alters the reward system and the memory system in your brain. Therefore, if you just say, like Nancy Reagan in the past said, just don't do it, and you think, you cow. Yeah, okay. So, just go to a young man and say, just be abstinent. Okay, so it's just don't have sex.
Or
okay?
someone with anxiety.
See how that goes.
Yeah, someone with anxiety.
Yeah,
saying,
exactly.
Just stop worrying.
Yeah, exactly.
Stop worrying.
That's right. Exactly. I
All
love
the
it.
time.
I love it.
All the time. Do you think? I know we can't actually separate this, but a lot of people ask me this, and I think it's very interesting. How much of alcohol addiction is a psychological addiction, and how much of it is a physical addiction? And obviously they interact, but psychologically, it's a coping mechanism. It's your way of existing, reaching for, coping. Physically, it's got the physical addiction. We know that because obviously coming off, there's all of those withdrawals. So I think a lot of people often think of alcoholism as a physical addiction, and they miss the psychological side. What are your thoughts?
Oh, please. Well, as everything, there is no clear answer. There is clearly a physical and a biological component there. There are at least 50 genes that are known to make you more likely to become an addict. So there's clearly something there that happens on a biological level to set you up with addiction. And then when you're an addict, there clearly changes because your body gets used to the poisons that you're pouring into you. May that be alcohol, may it be whatever it is. I met yesterday at a clinic for anaesthetic, and I met an elderly gentleman for his knee joint. And he admitted that he is drinking quite a bit of wine, and I sort of quickly asked him and quickly cut the crap. So, okay, how much are you really drinking? Yeah. And he was an old gentleman, and he said, a bottle of wine. And when they say a bottle of wine, there is always the next class where they open a bottle, and then maybe two. And I said, well, when was the last time that you didn't have a drink? And he thought and thought. And then he said, when I was a younger man, I was only drinking 3 days a week. And you think, So it is crazy, but that is the life that we go into. So therefore, imagine that, a lifetime of alcohol, and you suddenly stop it. Can you imagine that your brain will say, what the hell is going on here? And then you suddenly end up with the mixture of a very nasty food poisoning and a very nasty flu at the same time. And that's called physical withdrawal. So that's the biological side of things. But the reality is, addiction is actually a weird thing. Whilst I am an addict, I am now living a life where I look after myself and where I look after my needs, where I've dealt with the trauma, where I'm recognizing depression, anxiety, PTSD as friends. Bit smelly friends, but they're friends. And an anxiety attack, they are, that is just a message from my body. Oi, you just didn't look after yourself, okay? No surprise that you're a bit anxious now. So I see that as messengers. And therefore, if I deal with the trauma, if I look after myself and live a life that I'm proud of, suddenly there is no more need for alcohol. I no longer feel any urges. So I'm an addict, and I will always be an addict. No two ways around it. But here we are. I have dealt with the psychology that is driving my need to escape. The moment I dealt with that, the moment I was set free from my addiction. In the first year or two, it's a bitch, because there is still this strong urge. And for me, it was the halt. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. If I, in my first year, second year after rehab, if I found myself having 3 of them, I could imagine a drink. Having 4 of these drivers happening at the same time, I saw this beautiful crystal glass in the Chardonnay, in this beautiful, beautiful color. And I saw the condensation running down. And I had the taste of the Chardonnay, just a little bit of oak and a little bit of tingling and the warmth going down my gullet. That was as clear as the music that was playing out of the radio. Okay, that's how strong addiction is. But that was at the very start. That was the first year or two. And these are the dodgy ones, the really hard ones, because we know that people who go into rehab and go into treatment, they have got about an 80% relapse rate in the first year.
Yes.
And that's absolutely normal. And I had a slip, and I called it lapse. I don't call it relapse. A lapse is that you have a night of alcohol and then wake up the next day and you think you're idiot. And relapse means that you completely fall back into your behavior of the hiding. That's right, completely the whole thing. So I had a lapse, and my wife, of course, found out. You can't hide that you're drunk. You think you can, but for Christ's sake. So the next day, I woke up and hungover, and she came into our bedroom, lay down next to me, and said, "I love you. And now let's figure out what went wrong. Why did you go back?" And it was beautiful. And it was, where do we need to work more? And she was so understanding and so beautiful in that. That was gorgeous. I really had, she completely disarmed me, because I expected a third world war to start right there and then, and her laying into me, how dare you, feeling shame and guilt, because I was already shame there, and I was guilty, quite truly guilty. But no, she disarmed me and said, okay, what can we learn?
And isn't that such a crucial thing for family to understand the nature of what's happening, so that it's not a case of, I'm going to choose to quit alcohol and there you go, we're good to go. They need to understand the 80%, as you say, the probability of lapse, and to realise it's about just being there through the journey until we come out the other side, and having some tolerance for that.
But it's all
some support, supporting.
But also to recognize that you should never throw stones when you're in a glass house, okay? Tell me one person who is not, pardon the French, fucked up in the head. We all have got our trauma. We all have gone through nasty things. My wife has relied on alcohol for a long time. And she was a broken woman. I was a broken young man, stuffed up in the head with very weird core beliefs that were driving our actions, and complete inability to be mindful. God, you had, the amount of fights we had. And here you are, whilst you're quite right, you need to support. You also need to learn to look after yourself. And if a loved one in your family is going through rehab and through a transformation in this way, or is recovering from a mental illness and is learning new habits and a new way of life, this should be an invitation for the people around this person equally to explore what is actually going on, and maybe look at their own lives and actually seeing what kind of trauma has happened to them, what kind of behaviors were coming out in them that maybe were to a degree enabling. So you've got this codependency. So sometimes couples, both of them are so reliant on each other, and then suddenly that one person goes into rehab because it gets too much, and so he starts to stand up, and the other person suddenly says, "What the?" And they are dependent on this sick guy who's no longer sick.
Yeah, this other person's lost their role. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So interesting. So there's a lot of dynamics that are happening inevitably. And in my rehab, I was taught the only thing that changes in recovery is everything. And I didn't understand that initially. I didn't understand that. Nowadays, I know exactly what it means, because you will never be the same again. Friends will go away as quick as you can say woo, boo, because suddenly you are no longer the guy that is the driving factor for the drinking. You're no longer either the funny guy or the guy who's making a fool out of himself, so that they feel reassured that they are not the worst. So the moment you stop enabling them, you've lost them. They're gone.
And also a lot of the social events where you would previously catch up become different.
True.
You can still go to a bar. True. You can still drink other things, but they have to adjust and adapt, and some people don't want to do that. Yeah.
Very true. So it's that in the UK, certainly we had social clubs, and that was part and parcel of your life. You worked hard, and then you went to the social club, drank, and had meaningless sex or something like that. That was a way of life for many people, and it continues to be so. So suddenly, if you actually say, no, I might actually now go and just read a book, or might do some sport or so. People look, but what doesn't fit into their life. So yes, you're losing friends, but I want to encourage you guys. These are probably not the best friends.
No. Can I give you a little case study and to hear your thoughts on that? So, a family I can think of, clients a while back, so we're safe. Okay, so the father, significant alcohol problems, wakes up to drink, drinks through the day, and very erratic, inappropriate behaviour. Some of the children are saying, we're sick of this. When you've got this sorted, we'll get back in touch, and they think that will motivate him to step towards doing something. The other person says, I will help you get to rehab. Let's go to rehab. Now, if you don't make a go of that, if you don't come out the other side and stop with the alcohol, I'm going to step back as well. And she thinks that that's going to create the impetus for him to stick to his guns. So they do love their father, but they think they're helping by creating these ultimatums when in truth they're burnt out. And of course my approach was to really turn that around. What are your thoughts? Because I'm hearing this all the time. Family just don't know how to respond. They burn out and they think that ultimatums help.
If you give that person, I'll put myself now into this dad's position.
Sure.
If you would have told me, okay, you will go to rehab or that's it, we leave you. How many times did my family try that? How many times did my wife say that, I divorce you? And I would say, yeah, right. It was this kind of rebel, this kind of immediate fight. Okay, let's fight. There was not the kind of love there I couldn't see the love that they wanted to give me. They were on the right track. They wanted me to stop drinking and being self-destructive. But the immediate response that I got from an ultimatum was, I show you. I'm the man of the house. You don't tell me what to do. So I immediately came back with that. I would have rejected anything, and just for the spite of it, just to say no. That it never worked with me. Yet, when I was really, the reason I went into rehab is that one night I was drunk like a skunk and howling and crying my eyes out about the pain inside, that no matter how many vodka bottles I drank, I could not numb anymore. And my wife basically called my boss in the hospital, and he came around at 10 o'clock at night, and there I was snot blaring, crying, everything, drunk. You could probably barely understand me in my garage, and I was miserable. And he just listened, looked at me, and then I can't remember much. So next thing I did is I woke up the next morning in my bed, and in came my 2 young sons and my wife, and they all laid down with me and gave me a cuddle. And I thought, what the hell? And they said, look, last night you might remember, you might not remember, we had your boss here, he saw you, and together with him we have organized a 4-week stay in a rehabilitation hospital. That was on a Wednesday morning. Friday we are traveling. You don't have a choice. You're already stood down at work, so don't worry about anything there. We've already cancelled all your clinics. I was running a big private pain service then. We've cancelled all your clinics. And I said, what about the money? And said, don't worry. And we didn't have the money. It was $27,000 for that 4 weeks. But it was, with hindsight, the best investment ever. Okay, any of my investments pale in comparison. I didn't see it then. But because they showed me the love, they actually gave me a cuddle, hugged me. And I needed that so much. and they showed me, they made the decision behind my back. And that was when I understood that out of love, they were doing that for me. And I allowed myself to give in. I did no longer have to fight. I did no longer have to fight them. Tell them how strong I am, the anger, resentment, bullshit. I allowed myself to finally come to rest. And that was the most beautiful feeling. It was also the most helpless feeling. I had no idea what to expect. God, you hear you've got all these prejudices about rehab, all the kind of my God, what do they do with you? And it was quite an amazing ride. It was the most beautiful and the most horrific thing ever that you could do, because you have to fight some real demons when you go into rehab. And these demons are your emotions. You actually have to get to know yourself. Now, remember, I just came out of a life where for 25 years I had numbed myself so that I don't get to know myself, that I don't have to deal with my negative emotions. And suddenly, no more crutch to lean on. People asking some really, oh God.
Look at that.
I'm not sure if you can see the goosebumps.
I did. Look at
that. Suddenly asking you some really interesting questions. And it was, oh my God. But it was weird.
That would take so much courage. Straight up courage.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know.
That was the biggest achievement in my life.
That's it.
All the doctor titles and all that shit. Forget it. Forget it. It's nothing. Nothing what I've done in my life took as much courage and as much strength as me admitting that I was powerless over alcohol and that I was absolutely, that I could no longer do it the way I thought I know it all. No. It was time to seek a power team that was much bigger than me.
Absolutely. From a psych perspective, we talk about primary emotions and we talk about secondary emotions. And primary are the vulnerable ones. That's the ones where we are very raw, the fear, the sadness. And the secondary are the defense mechanisms. So that's the anger. That's the fight. And it seems to me like you went from that secondary level of functioning and you dipped down into that primary, and it would have been an incredible door to open, and there you were ready to meet yourself. It's pretty profound.
But also, let's again say, when we were talking about the biological side of addiction and the withdrawal, I didn't have a full-blown withdrawal, but I certainly, my blood pressure was through the roof, and I must say that the first week, it's sort of moments that I can remember, but ultimately, certainly so much happened. I was probably more resembling a deer caught in the headlights rather than anything else. So it was the most bizarre time. So when you actually talk about this conscious addressing of such fundamental things such as trauma and shame and guilt and all those other core beliefs, Christ, I had no idea what I was talking about. I had no idea what they were talking about. Having said that, I sensed it. In the very first day, I walked in there and was quite shell-shocked as you are, and there was this big poster there. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. And I looked at that and said, how do they know how I feel? Did they write that for me? I was thinking, that's for me. That's sort of a personal welcome. They really figured out what my problem is. Only later did I realize that this was a prayer that was written many, many decades and probably centuries ago.
Yeah.
Here you go. But I sensed that I was in trouble, and that whatever I had done so far was surely not working.
Can I
if at all, it was reinforcing the pain.
Yeah, and also that process of saying, I don't know, that would have been a very confronting process, because in the medical world, you were the expert, you were the professional, you were proficient in the social status. Doctors are literally at the top of the ladder. So you're used to being the guy, the go-to guy, the guy who would come in and rescue and and here you were in a situation, and you were so vulnerable and a child in that situation. So that would have been really confronting to you as well, I'm guessing.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And that is probably the hardest thing. And I sort of yo-yoed in and out of these roles. I tried to maintain as much, how shall I say that, as much status and dignity, whilst at other times I realized, shut the fuck up and just listen. and just, so it was this up and down and up and down. So I had anger and resentment. So my case manager made me write a letter to a certain institution that I was really focusing my anger on. And she said, look, why don't you write it all down and just give me an idea of what actually happened to you? Ooh, I wrote until my fingers bled that night. And next day I came with many, many papers here and I said, all ready to go for the meeting. Here, come on, let's talk about it. I show you. You will understand why I had to drink. And she took my papers, quickly sort of looked at them, folded them in half, and put them to the side. And I thought, but, and I became angry with her. I can't remember what she said in that meeting, but I was pissed off with her. And next day, I let rip about her, about how she dares to talk to me as a doctor like that. And just the other case managers were just saying, yeah, okay, yeah. But I yo-yoed back into that weird, I know it all. Yeah. Only then. But what she did, she gave me actually a book to read. And that book was called Rise. Or Rise Above, something along that. I think it's no longer in print. And it was the story of a woman who was married to a gentleman from a different culture. And when they broke up, this gentleman came to her place, to her driveway, and in front of her eyes killed all her children, and then killed her father as well. And that all happened in this book in the first 10, 15 pages. And I read that, and I thought, and suddenly my anger and resentment suddenly paled. And whilst you never compare trauma, I needed that at that time, because I was so fixated. It's all about me. It's all about me. Look at me. Poor me, poor me, poor me, another one. That I needed that comparison. And I suddenly, that was that night when I read that book, I actually couldn't finish it. I stopped there. And I was gobsmacked, and I stopped there, and I suddenly began to realize, hang on, wow, okay, where do we go from here? Now I had taken away that thing, that external thing I could focus on as being the whole reason for my misery in life. Now that was taken away. What are we doing now? So I can't numb myself with alcohol, and no other drugs. And all the culprit is gone. So what's left now? And then the miracles start happening. You have got the feeling, the session called feelings. The most dreaded session in recovery is that you're sitting around a circle where no one is allowed any sunglasses, hat, nothing in your hands. You sit around in a circle, and the bloody instructor says, "Welcome to feelings." And then he shuts up.
Really?
And no one says a word.
And you'll just
no
look
one
around
said a
awkwardly.
freaking word. Exactly. And then one person says something, and another person says something. You ate all the chocolate last night. What? Damn, there was no chocolate this morning. And suddenly, things happen. People laugh, cry, fight, anything goes. But these are all feelings that suddenly are coming out that we are experiencing. As if you were an alien coming onto Earth and observing, these are strange people there. Look what they do. They get all animated, etc. It was the same thing. Because so far, all those feelings, I numbed them or suppressed them. And now they were there. How does sadness feel like How does anger actually feel like? Okay, now that was one I realized. What is actually shame? What is guilt? What is all those kind of things? That's new shit. That's new stuff. And that was, scary. Really, really scary. Until you actually get to know a little bit more about yourself. And I had some gorgeous people who were leading me down that journey. The first they came to step 4 in the 12-step program. And in step 4, you do this inventory, this deep going inventory where you look at everything that is really going on in your life and the emotions that are there and it's amazing. It's a really good thing, but it's a huge step. Yeah. And so I did that. So and as a doctor, I went systematically. Boom, 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 boom. You do tables after tables after tables, and it's all quite nice to do these tables. But then at some stage, what happens is some mean person says, okay, so here you are. That person did that to you, and that was your response, i.e. you were really pissed off. That was your anger and resentment. That's cool. And then they put another column on there. And now say, well, what was your role there? What was your contribution to it? Tell us, could there be that actually that there are two needed to tango? And you suddenly realize, oh shit. So amazing stuff. Painful.
Wow.
Peeing glass shells is more enjoyable than actually doing that. Okay.
Wow. How wonderful to learn to take responsibility like that, because then you've got that skill set to make choices, to change your approach, and then you get to see the positive effect of that. That would be so reinforcing. It would be quite yeah.
Empowering,
encouraging. It would be mind-blowing to see how people can respond if you approach things constructively rather than in a reactive way. So yeah, major domino effect, I guess, ripple effect.
Exactly. Wow. And as with everything, the initial first step is very, very hard. You go the first time into a gym and you try to lift a bloody pen to sign the signature, and you're already shaking, and leave alone even the dumbbells over there. Well, after 6 months, you throw these weights around, and it feels quite good and feels okay. It's exactly the same thing when you get to know your emotions, when you start practicing and training yourself in taking ownership. Being a leader, integrity, being defined as doing the right thing when no one is watching. That's integrity. And that is foreign for me.
Oh, absolutely. And Stephan, you would have had to have done a health check going back in time, going through all of your trauma methodically as well, so that those raw wounds weren't sitting there to basically to heal and not to be re-triggered. So
but in reality, that will take time.
Yeah.
That will take time. I went into rehab 8 years ago, and I thought I had done pretty good work, and I was working on my recovery for constantly, basically. And I thought, done, dusted, ticked. And it was really only about 2 years ago that a friend of mine ended up going through a nasty bout of his PTSD. And it was scary to watch him. He fell apart big time. And then one day he came back to work and said, look, it's all fine. I'm going to be just fine now. You'll see. And I thought, what the hell? And he said, yeah, I've got this new therapist and I'm going to be fine in a week's time. And I looked at him and kept my mouth shut, but in my mind I was going through the diagnostic criteria of PTSD. Well, come on, man. Here you are, showing hypervigilance, can't sleep, bang, bang, bang. And I rattled them off in my head. And suddenly I realized that I'm describing myself.
Wow.
And I actually had to suddenly... I stopped there and then. I stopped in my track and thought, It was only 2 years ago that I made that leap, because my mind had created an abstract or a construct around the trauma that had occurred to me. And I made it a positive thing, because it made me that strong young man. It made me grow up to be a man. I'm a fighter. I'm now good. Have a look at me. I'm the trauma guy. Trauma as in medical trauma, anaesthetist specialist. So I turned it all into something positive. Therefore, I actually took away the chance for me to heal. So it was still there. So you're quite right. It was festering, but I looked at it as a positive thing, like a battle scar. Look at me. Hey, this is, I'm a man. And only then, when that happened 2 years ago, and he actually got better within a week. And I thought, what the hell? And so I quietly said, okay, who did you see? What did you do?
I want some of this. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, give
and
me
I
some.
did. I did get some of this.
Yeah.
I did get some of this.
That's
and it was in this
wild.
particular case a beautiful psychologist / hypnotherapist who asked me the right questions and helped me by scrambling a bit around in my brain, my core beliefs, and through 3 sessions of hypnotherapy, I was a changed man. Those 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning dreams were certainly no longer there. They're very rarely coming nowadays, whilst they were regular as clockwork up until that moment in time. And there you are. So, but I did not allow myself to heal. Yeah, I did not allow myself to heal because I didn't see that there was trauma. And while some other people might have said, whoa, is that not a trauma? I would have repackaged it. I had this complete topsy-turvy construct there. No, it's a good thing that it happened to me, because what happened to me, therefore.
Yeah, and mental health isn't about being okay, is it? It's about having a spring clean and processing, and resilience is actually about going through all the grit and really having a hard time and then recovering. But often our coping mechanism is to try to just be okay, and there are strengths, and you were right. You were right about the strengths, but it wasn't the whole picture. Yeah, I think with trauma, there's a timing. Often people they're ready at a certain time in life to deal with certain things, and other times it's just not right for them. They don't have the resources. They're not feeling brave in that moment, and I respect that. I think there's a time we just need to, be sensitive. And so maybe it wasn't your time yet.
No, you're so right, and it's hard to distinguish there because as a hallmark of addiction is denial.
Yes.
So 95% of alcoholics would absolutely swear on their heart, on the grave of their dead mother, that they are not addicted.
And be offended by the accusation.
Yeah. Absolutely, exactly. And we make we make that a diagnostic criteria. If you look at the CAGE questionnaire, the CAGE questions, they're a beautiful way of figuring it out. If you guys out there, if you're listening and you don't know what we're talking about, CAGE is an acronym to stand for thinking about, have you thought about cutting down? Or have you been, have people told you should cut down or thought it yourself? Have you been angry when other people talked about your drinking? Have you felt guilty about the way you were drinking, your behavior? And E is for eye opener. Do you need a drink in the morning? And if you're 2, well, come on. If you're 3, come on. If you're 4, full house, yay! Okay.
Probably not yay.
Well, yes, it is yay, because then finally you have got a diagnosis. Okay. Finally, you can actually say, okay, I'm a bloody idiot for denying it, because it's so blatantly obvious here in front of me.
Yeah.
I can no longer hide. And maybe someone calmly explaining all that to you, and maybe today on your show, us talking about it might rattle someone's cage, because they quietly they have come onto this show to listen for a reason.
Yes.
Now we're laying open my trauma and my recovery, and maybe it hopefully plants that seed for people to see that, wow, if this guy got his shit together, and there was a lot of things on his plate. Number one, you know a fraction of what happened to me.
Absolutely.
Number one, lots of trauma, but I managed to get through it, and I'm a very stronger man now. There was a lot to ride on, my profession. I mean, here I am as a doctor saying I'm an addict. For crying out loud, what will my patients think? What will my peers think? Well, I tell you what my patients think. They say, bloody well done, doctor. And by the way, so how did you do it? And
Yep.
because I know I've got this problem, and I have yet to come across someone who takes offense.
They would admire you.
No.
They would be inspired by you, and they would
Exactly.
Relate to you, which is wonderful. Yeah.
And guys out there, it doesn't matter who you are. You might be a judge, you might be a minister, you might be a minister or a parliament person, so a politician, or you might be actually a pastor, minister in church. I've seen all of them falling foul of alcohol, of gambling, of other addictions. And there's this beautiful image. Imagine this beautiful tree that is growing up and branching out. And all these big branches are the various addictions that they are. So from the behavioral addiction, the gambling, etc., to the alcohol, drugs, towards shopping like mad, towards sex, towards everything. So there's all those range of addictions up there. If you come back down on the tree and actually look down into the root system, that's where the trauma, the depression, the mental health problems are that are causing the addiction to come out.
Yeah, we have to look at
so
the
therefore,
whys.
Exactly, so true. And therefore, and that's the problem with cross addiction. If you don't deal with down there with the root system, well, you stop one thing and you start the next. So if you don't drink like a fish, you smoke like a bloody chimney.
Yeah.
If that is not right, then you game or you have sex with everything that has a heartbeat. You just change your addictions up there. And it is the same old. So and that is again something that we see again and again. How many people have swapped their alcohol addiction towards sugar addiction and eating disorders. So that's a huge thing. And that's something I'm as guilty as charged here, because it's certainly I still deal with stress, with now emotional overeating. I'm doing the Bridget Jones diet. In the morning, a salad leaf. Lunchtime, 2 salad leaves. In the evening, 5 kilogram container of ice cream. Thank you very much. And some whipped cream on top. Okay, I'm getting better in it, but it's still that thing there. So that shows me there is still a lot of work to be done.
Yeah.
And part of it is nice. Part of it is good, because I haven't reached my full potential. So therefore, I'm actually excited that I get to transform again, that I get to grow again, that I get to become a different man again.
Well, I don't
so
think
that's
that
actually
ever
quite
stops,
cool.
does it? Never stops,
No,
does it? We're always
if you-
learning, always growing, always expanding.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be pretty boring if we'd arrived. Yeah, definitely.
Oh,
Well,
please. No, I don't want to arrive.
no. We'll tell you
So
what.
have you figured out who you want to be when you grow up?
We don't grow up, though, do we? I hope. I hope.
Right answer.
Tell you what, we might wrap up. I cannot thank you enough for coming along. And I just think that I love podcasts because people learn from stories, people learn from personal connection. And I know so many people that have just had enough of the threads of relating, learning, wisdom to come together for them to step over the line and to reach out and get the help. So I cannot thank you enough for coming and sharing. I think it's really inspiring, and I think you've had a lot of courage. I think it's wonderful.
Thank you so much. You honored me for having me as a guest, to allowing me to be a guest on your show. It is. I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot again today by you asking me questions, by me reflecting on things, maybe sharing something that maybe I had not shared before, me just using a little bit of a different phrasing, and suddenly by phrasing it that little bit different, I thought,
It's all the different
And again-
angles of the prism, isn't it? You just get to explore the different elements, and it's just so valuable. Oh, I've really enjoyed.
So thank you for offering this platform for people like me to learn more. Thank you for an hour of therapy, because that's exactly what I had here. So yes.
Well, thanks
Thank you
again.
so much.
Thanks for coming on Signpost for Living with Dr. Kirsten Hunter. Thank you, Neff. Appreciate it. See you later.